This video is brought to you by Kufandy. As a person who works from home and doesn't go out nearly as much as he should, most of my outfits end up looking like this, which is why I'm thankful for the sponsor of today's video, Kufandy high-quality men's clothing, who are giving you the hookup on their new business casual collection. Whether you're walking to work, class, or like me, to the kitchen, they'll have you stylin', wildin', and living it up in the city. And as the temps continue to drop, they'll also keep you warm. Here I am rocking the white striped blazer, matching pants, and black flat cap, like the cold never bothered me anyway. Even though it definitely does. With so many items and styles to choose from, they're guaranteed to have the right look for you. So if you'd like to find it, go to kufandy.com and use my code EP15 to get 15% off your order. Once again, that's code EP15 at kufandy.com. Thanks again to Kufandy for sponsoring this video, and I hope you enjoy.
This is a charter. It's invisible, imaginary. It's a fugazi, it's a fugazi, it's a hoozy, it's a woozy, it's a...
Fairy dust. It doesn't exist. It's never landed. It is no matter. It's not on the elemental chart. It's not fucking real.
Well, maybe to ordinary schmoes like you and me it isn't, but to the 15 teams of the NASCAR Cup Series, this little symbolic plot of oxygen is everything. It essentially allows them the right to race.
Owning a charter is kind of like owning a sports franchise. You enter into an agreement with the league, and in return, you get to be part of the show, playing games and competing for championships. Well, in theory. And NASCAR started doing the same thing just a decade ago, giving out the first ever charter contracts to the top 36 cars in points from the previous year. And when I say giving out, I literally mean giving out. None of the teams had to pay a cent to get them. They essentially inherited the right to run every single race for free. Now, of course, they still had to pay for the people and the cars and the equipment and all that stuff, but
the point is that at the outset, a NASCAR charter technically had a value of $0. Well, just 8 years later, one reportedly got sold for $40 million. 40 mil. Inflation is no joke.
In reality, the charters were always meant to have value. No team would ever give up their slot for free, but just like sports franchises, every charter comes with an agreement. You can be in the show only if you play by their rules. This is important because in 2024, NASCAR proposed an agreement so egregiously unfair that two of their teams not only refused to sign it, but took them to court. The owner of the first team you might know, Bob Jenkins, Tennessee fast food franchisee, also owns a trucking company, has been around for a couple decades. And the second guy you also might know, he makes tequila, has a shoe brand, co-starred in a movie with Bugs Bunny, and...
Jordan, open, Chicago with the lead! The Chicago Bulls have won their 6th NBA championship.
That's right, Michael Jordan, not content with his, how should I put this politely, failed career as an NBA team owner, has expanded his horizons as an owner in NASCAR. And needless to say, when they slid their new agreement Mike's way, it became personal to him. So personal that the man himself, along with the other team owners, literally took the stand to testify against the very motorsport they were competing in.
And through this year-long legal shootout, we've learned a lot of troubling truths both about the sport itself and the people running it. But the scope of implications spans so much further. In fact, the outcome of this case had the power to shift the entire landscape of motorsports forever.
Despite their recent squabbles, Michael Jordan has always been a staunch supporter of stock car racing. Growing up in coastal North Carolina, his dad would often take him and his siblings to Charlotte, Darlington, Rockingham, even Daytona and Talladega. And once he got to UNC, he shared his passion with Tar Heel teammate Brad Daugherty.
I've been around racing my whole life. My uncles, my father, everybody, they were drag racers. So I grew up around race cars. I dragged Michael into the space now, so he's racing with it.
Daugherty often turned the TV in the locker room to show the NASCAR race, and while Jordan gave him shit for it, because he's Michael Jordan, he would also sit down and watch along with him. He genuinely loved racing, so much so that after his retirement, no, not that one, not that one, yeah, that one. He started a superbike team creatively named Michael Jordan Motorsports. They won some lower-level championships and higher-level races, but after sponsors pulled out, they were forced to fold after just 10 years of existence. But at least he still had the Charlotte Bobcats. Oof, yeah, there was a time when it felt like the GOAT ruined just about everything he touched, but he still loved NASCAR. Tuned in every weekend to watch, which is why when one of its newest star drivers was sitting courtside at one of his games, he just had to meet him. That driver was Denny Hamlin, who, in addition to his role as a FedEx spokesperson, was becoming a legitimate threat for the Cup Series championship. Though he also took a keen interest in basketball, famously starting his own league in his own court composed of drivers and crewmen. Basketball, racing, the two hit it off immediately, and before long, Jordan and Hamlin had become great friends, going to each other's events and striking up brand deals. Denny even became the first and for a long time only driver to wear Jordan brand fire suits, which no, are not commercially available, sorry. Things were going steady, and soon came rumors of a professional partnership. In August of 2020, media sources reported that the pair were looking to purchase a partial stake in Richard Petty Motorsports and the number 43 car, the second winningest car number in NASCAR history behind, oh, well, would you look at that. These were, of course, just rumors and nothing more, though unbeknownst to the rest of the world, they set the wheels in motion for a real team-up.
I think there were some rumors floating around about me and him being a part of a team to begin with, and he obviously said, fake news, but if you want to make it real news, let me know, so.
After less than a month of texts and meetings, Hamlin and his new driver, Bubba Wallace, unveiled the team to the public as 2311 Racing. Now 5 years into their existence, they've actually done pretty well, breaking the mold and coming surprisingly close to a championship.
It's going into turn 3 and...
Yeah, baby! Yeah!
It hasn't been like Mike's other ownership ventures at all. It is a legit competitive team. You can't really say the same for their brothers-in-arms at Front Row Motorsports, who have spent most of their time in the Cup Series as far from the front as possible. But what they lack in pedigree, they make up for in longevity. Even as a smaller operation, they've managed to survive over 20 years in NASCAR's Premier Series, outlasting many of the more successful teams that have come both before and after. We'll get back to that. While they only boast 4 total victories, each one comes with a story worth telling. In 2013, they claimed their first win in a 1-2 finish, locking out the front row at Talladega. In 2016, they managed to hold the lead just long enough for a fog bank to roll onto the Pocono backstretch and ruin any prospect of the race continuing. In 2021, they parted the Penske cars like Moses to win the Daytona 500, the biggest race in NASCAR, and in 2023, they essentially forced the Indianapolis road course race into extinction, as it hasn't been run since. All of this to say that while neither of these teams are the biggest fish in the pond, they're also not noobs. Both have plenty of standing within the sport, which made it all the more powerful when they took a stand together on October 2nd, 2024. When 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports filed a joint lawsuit for anti-competitive practices against NASCAR, basically calling them out for being a big ol' monopoly. So now it's high time we meet the defendants, the monarchs of American motorsport, the France family. It was Big Bill France Sr. who first founded NASCAR all the way back in 1948 and served as its president and CEO until 1972. He then passed it off to his son, Bill France Jr., who served until 2003 before passing it off to his son, Brian France. And before I start the slander, they deserve their flowers. After all, without Bill Sr., organized stock car racing may well have never existed. Without Bill Jr., it may have never grown from a southeastern niche to a cultural phenomenon. And while I'm about to go in on his little boy Brian, even he proved instrumental in implementing a lot of the modern safety features that, in all likelihood, have saved lives. But he's also an idiot. In August of 2018, he was arrested and later found guilty of driving while intoxicated, registering a blood alcohol level over twice the legal limit. Mind you, this happened on the same day that NASCAR's most popular driver, Chase Elliott, finally claimed his first Cup Series win. One of the sport's most anticipated moments, and their CEO gets busted for drunk driving.
Ironic.
During his leave of absence that later turned permanent, it was his uncle who quietly took the reins as the 4th member of the France family to serve as CEO. But make no mistake, Jim France has been a part of NASCAR through most of its existence. He started working in his father's burgeoning racing empire back in 1959 at the ripe old age of 14, and in 1992 inherited a seat on the NASCAR board of directors. Though he was more than just a figurehead, through both his brother and nephew's reign, he served as a key advisor, with Bill France Jr. once joking, "In the past, we'd have a board meeting in the hall. My brother and I would meet and shoot the breeze for a few minutes." It's impossible to say for sure, but Jim France may very well be the most influential voice in NASCAR history, which is why it should come as no surprise that once he took control, things started changing fast. Almost immediately, he appointed a new president, longtime executive Steve Phelps, then oversaw the acquisition of 12 different racetracks all around the country, and broke ground on developing a whole new model of car unlike anything we've ever seen. And all of that happened within just 5 months of him becoming CEO. The time since has been a roller coaster, with plenty of new tracks and schedule changes, a new $7.7 billion media rights deal, and Steve Phelps being appointed as NASCAR's first ever commissioner. Interesting. Long story short, Jimbo's tenure has been turbulent and transformative, though not entirely for good reasons. It was the evening of September 6, 2024, when NASCAR sent its brand new charter agreement for the teams to sign. Though before they could even look it over, they were blindsided by the deadline. Midnight, mere hours after they had received the contract, on a Friday night no less, and the teams were expected to either sign it or risk losing their charters and thus their place on the grid. For multi-million-dollar companies whose entire purpose is putting cars on that grid, this was understandably alarming. They all had their reservations, but they also had contracts and employees and businesses to run, which is why 13 of them gave in immediately. They didn't want to, they had to. If they wanted to stay alive, there was no other choice, which is to say that for the 2 teams who didn't sign, everything was on the line. Believe it or not, companies don't like when you try to sue them, which is why NASCAR was more than happy to revoke their charters and even potentially bar them from competition, which made the stakes immediately clear. If the teams win, NASCAR would likely have to reform a few things, but if NASCAR wins, the teams just die. 2311 and Front Row would be forced to shut down. End of story. That is one hell of a gamble, but also shows just how confident they were in their case. So what was their case? What proof did they have that NASCAR was a monopoly? Well, as it turns out, pretty much everything. All of those big sweeping changes I just talked about, I shit you not, each and every one committed some sort of antitrust violation. Buying up all those tracks just meant all of that revenue going straight to NASCAR. Same for the TV deal. While NASCAR got the bulk of those billions, the teams were left with scraps. Even the cars themselves now had to be built by NASCAR-mandated suppliers, which made them, on average, twice as costly to build. And you better not get caught messing with those parts, else you want to incur a 6-figure fine. Poor Stewart-Haas Racing received one of those in 2023, and just so happened to close their doors in 2024.
Coincidence? I think not!
Which leads us to another ugly truth. In the 10 years since charters were introduced, 11 Cup Series teams have gone out of business, including, at one point, the defending champion. In 2017, Furniture Row Racing won the whole darn thing, yet still had to close up shop the following year. This isn't necessarily shocking, race teams have always come and gone quickly, but at a time where NASCAR itself is more profitable than ever before, the math ain't mathin', and it's not so glamorous for the surviving teams either. Last year, Jeff Gordon, vice chairman of the winningest team in NASCAR history, Hendrick Motorsports, revealed a not-so-fun fact about the company.
We don't make money, right? I mean, it's one of those. I don't think Hendrick Motorsports has made a profit in 10 years.
10 years, you say? You'd be stupid to enter the ring of racing and expect to turn a profit, but for the best teams with the most backing to be losing like they are, it's not sustainable, and it's also made it near impossible for new investors to throw in. I mean, just look at the 3 newest teams. Spire Motorsports is just a part of the bigger Spire Sports and Entertainment conglomerate. Trackhouse has relied on backing from musical artist Pitbull, the Avenue Sports Fund, and some of the biggest brands in the industry. And of course, Jordan has a whole host of his own companies that he uses for 2311. Through his testimony, we learned that in the last 5 years, he's spent $40 million of his own personal funds to keep the team afloat, regularly fielding his own cars under his own brand, which, to be fair, look pretty sharp. In a sport once dominated by the blue-collar working class, it's now a prerequisite to have a $100 million side hustle if you want any hope of competing. And with the way things were going, even that wouldn't be enough, as over the next 5 years, teams were projected to collectively lose over $200 million. So 2311, Front Row, and attorney Jeffrey Kessler went into the lawsuit with 3 big goals in mind. Make the charters permanent, ensuring long-term security, have a bigger say in big decisions because, duh, and for the love of God, give them a larger cut of league revenue. That's it. That's all they were looking for. Yet time and time again, through over a year of negotiations, NASCAR wouldn't budge, specifically on permanent charters. Jim France later testified that with how things were changing, he didn't know how to come to an agreement that covers forever. And so continued the petty back and forth that loomed over the entire 2025 NASCAR season. With the lawsuit running simultaneously with NASCAR and the "you can't sue us" clause in the charter agreement being invoked, the 6 cars fielded by 2311 and Front Row were in jeopardy of being parked. Judge Kenneth Bell quelled that concern by granting the teams a preliminary injunction, letting them keep their charters during the lawsuit, but later exacerbated it by unexpectedly reversing that decision. This meant that for the second half of the year, neither Front Row nor 2311 had guaranteed starting spots. They'd have to qualify their way into every single race, and if more than 40 cars showed up on any given weekend, it was possible for them to miss the race entirely, a killing blow in the points. But ironically, since NASCAR is bleeding teams from its own shitty business model, that never happened. They got to run every race, and 23XI even got 2 of their cars into the playoffs, so woohoo. Also, it's worth noting that when the charters were revoked, NASCAR wanted to sell them to other buyers before they had even made it to court, which was so fiendishly evil that the judge had to step in and tell them, no, you can't do that. As tensions rose and the deadline for settlement drew closer, NASCAR was forced to give the public a look under the hood at their financial records, and some of what was found was not flattering. In 2024, the teams lost, on average, about $2.5 million apiece, whereas NASCAR, as a company, profited over $100 million, and that discrepancy in the year before was even worse. Then there were the text messages. In reacting to team owner Richard Childress's criticism in a radio interview, then NASCAR president Steve Phelps said, quote, "Childress needs to be taken out back and flogged. He's a stupid redneck who owes his entire fortune to NASCAR." Richard Childress, one of the very few original racers who's been in the sport for over 50 years, the owner of Dale Earnhardt's Black Number 3, the man behind one of the greatest icons in motorsports, and this is how they talk about him. Look, we've all said things we're not proud of. I won't act like I'm any better, but this was not a good look. And there was also discussion over a supposed rival racing league, the Superstar Racing Experience. Created by former NASCAR driver Tony Stewart and former NASCAR crew chief Ray Evernham, it was basically an all-star series with spec cars raced on small tracks by superstar drivers from all walks of motorsport. It was a lot like IROC, another all-star series that once worked very closely with NASCAR and even occasionally opened for them during their race weekends. If they could strike up another partnership like that, it could be extremely popular. So what did NASCAR have to say about SRX? Need to put a knife in this trash series. It says a lot that instead of wanting to join, collaborate, or simply let it exist, NASCAR's impulse was to shut SRX down. And the following year, their wish came true. There's no evidence that they had anything to do with it, but after 2024, the Superstar Racing Experience was no more. Though they did reactivate their Twitter in light of the lawsuit, and this was very funny. Just weeks before trial, NASCAR attempted one last Hail Mary to get the teams to settle, but things only got worse. Not only did they fail to reach an agreement, but Judge Bell dealt a brutal blow. Summary judgment, a decision or ruling made prior to the trial. NASCAR's key argument against being a monopoly was that if the teams didn't like their terms, they could go race somewhere else, like IndyCar. But first of all, you don't exactly need to be a mechanic to see why that's just plain ridiculous. And secondly, these cars are the intellectual property of NASCAR, built from parts mandated by NASCAR and made for tracks owned by NASCAR. They are created for NASCAR and NASCAR alone, which is why a solid month before proceedings had even begun, Judge Bell decided that, yeah, NASCAR's a monopoly. Now it's just a matter of seeing how deep the rabbit hole goes. With this being the climax of the case, you'd think I'd spend the most breath on this part, but like any case involving 2 billionaires fighting over who gets to keep more money, it was boring. Extremely boring. Every journalist who was there agreed it was boring. For an industry known for speed, things moved incredibly slowly, averaging a blistering 1 to 2 witness testimonies per day. Judge Bell became so agitated that at the end of the 4th day, he ordered both sides to pick up the pace, but as you know from being 18 minutes and 27 seconds into this video, there was a lot to cover. The plaintiff's argument was expectedly spirited and emotional, with Denny Hamlin in particular breaking down on the witness stand. Having just suffered a particularly tough championship loss, clouded by his father's deteriorating health, he was facing undoubtedly one of the toughest times in his life. But still he stood. Quote, "Your costs aren't covered to put on NASCAR's show, and there's only one side going out of business." He also recalled how a couple years earlier, during the year-end awards banquet, he spotted Jim France eating his lunch alone. He decided to confront him about the mounting costs of owning a team, to which Jim essentially just said, spend less. And when he expressed concern over the survival of his team and not trying to be a statistic like the many owners who have gone out of business, Jim simply said he had no answer. So what was NASCAR's defense in all of this? What did they have to say? Okay, well, it wasn't actually nothing, but honestly, it may as well have been. Most of their cross-examination felt like more of a distraction than anything else. At one point, the defense attorney, Lawrence Butterman, accused Hamlin of not wanting the drivers to get paid, which is ironic, and Denny responded that teams pay the drivers, not NASCAR. So then Butterman brought up Hamlin's own salary, saying most drivers don't make $14 million a year, to which Hamlin said, most drivers don't win the number of races that I do. They later grilled Bob Jenkins about using his own businesses for sponsorship, something they curiously did not do with Michael Jordan, who seemed to just want everyone to get along. As both a player and owner, he experienced multiple lockouts in the NBA that stunted the growth of professional basketball for months on end. So as much as he had grown frustrated by them, he didn't want to see NASCAR meet the same fate. Through everything, he still loved the sport above all else. As for France's testimony, you could chalk it up to nothing more than a barrage of I don't knows and I can't remembers. Journalist Jeff Gluck stated, "I don't think I'm underselling it to say Jim France's testimony was shockingly bad so far. And by now, 7 days in, even the public could see that NASCAR was in deep trouble." The very next night, Johnny Morris, the CEO of Bass Pro Shops, which sponsors a great many NASCAR teams, including Richard Childress's, released an open letter calling for the resignation of Steve Phelps and for a prompt and fair resolution to the lawsuit. And wouldn't you know it, the very next morning, after 14 months of holding out, NASCAR gave up. They finally settled, giving the teams almost everything they asked for: permanent charters, a bigger seat at the table, a larger chunk of TV revenue, and more. Reputations be damned, the real solution was to hit them where it hurts.
Well, I grew up watching his father build this sport, and I didn't want to have to tear it down. I don't think he wanted to be torn down. And at the end of the day, we reached some type of compromise.
A moment I felt went largely overlooked came during Bob Jenkins' testimony. After revealing that he loses $6.8 million a year running his race team, he was asked, then why do it? And that's the question, isn't it? He wasn't born into racing, didn't inherit it, he's only ever lost money from it, and would probably have a much easier life if he had just never founded Front Row to begin with. But just like Jordan, he grew up a fan. He followed the sport, he went to the tracks, he even became a chartered member of the Dale Earnhardt fan club. He is as big a fan as they come, the kind of person that NASCAR should be cherishing as much as they can. And they spat in his face. In the face of every pillar that's made them what they are, all whilst presiding over maybe the worst decline in the history of organized sports. A decline so infamous that it outshines the sport itself. They have done perhaps the worst job anyone has ever done in their position, and they've made millions by doing it. And even now, being in the doldrums of public opinion, they've resorted to half measures to try and save face. Sure, they ditched the playoffs, but most fans never wanted a postseason to begin with. Sure, Steve Phelps is now gone, but the cause of this whole fiasco is still CEO. And as of right now, we have yet to hear a peep on whether or not the business model will actually change. The teams may have gotten what they wanted, but there's still plenty of work to be done. And with that, I'll leave you with one last text message revealed by the suit. When asked about how to secure a better agreement from NASCAR, ensuring a brighter future for everyone, the president of 2311 Racing, Steve Laletta, said, quote, "Jim dying." A morbid thing to say? Maybe, but there's truth in jest.